he's actually pretty much the foremost when it comes to environmental research. He's done so much work on climate change.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for coming to see my talk. So my name is Vicky Lucas, and I work for the e-infrastructures and data management section of the Belmont Forum. So I'm going to talk to you first of all about the Belmont Forum itself. Then I'll talk to you about the e-infrastructure group, which I'm part of, and then I'll have a few more philosophical thoughts on the end. So the Belmont Forum are a group of science funders and science councils, so well represented in the UK. Lots of the UK research councils are in there. You'll see EPSRC, NERC, BBSRC, but a global representation. It also contains ICSU, the Council for Science, of which Future Earth is part of as well. So an influential group. So they came together it started in 2009 with a subset of these and has grown ever since. So because there are science funders within the group, it funds science. So there are calls periodically, and these are ones that have happened to date. And we've got the one that was most recently that Future Earth have put into transformations to sustainability. So the premise of the Belmont Forum is to improve communication, especially for things like climate change, so global change research. And these are the kind of topics that it's picked out to fund. So food, water, energy nexus, and transformations to sustainability are currently being assessed at the moment. And there'll be another 6 calls between now and this time next year. So a very active group. Access for all these countries to talk to each other. So for different countries, not all countries participate in every single call, and it's usually done on a match funding type scheme. So if the UK decides to participate, then that will match fund against, say, a US organisation also deciding to participate. So the underlying priorities of the Belmont Forum are that it benefits both science and society by providing funding for specific types of scientific calls and demanding certain things within those calls. Its reach is expected to be greater than just the national funding by itself. That's the purpose of it. So rather than just the UK funding something, by encouraging countries to participate in greater numbers, if nothing else, and to think about the full outcome, so transdisciplinary as opposed to just disciplinary research, it's expected to accelerate things like climate change research. So as we'll see, I'll come back to this at the end, but 3 countries have to be involved, and ideally, depending on the call, social sciences, natural scientists, and stakeholders, so businesses and or the general public, have to be considered as part of each funded activity as well. So the Belmont Forum itself, and the e-infrastructure and data management group, but the Belmont Forum itself have adopted these data principles. So the data that's produced by scientific research, now it has influence there, so if you're funded by a Belmont Forum partner, then these are the kind of things it will expect you to do as part of that funding. So the data you produce should be discoverable, accessible, understandable, and managed. So that's also sometimes expressed as the FAIR principles. So the data that you produce is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So that whatever you produce has a life beyond just your project. So I think that's one of the nice links with sustainable production and consumption, is that it's not just about things, it's potentially about data that research projects also produce. And does that have value just beyond the project that produced it in the first place? So these principles were adopted by the Belmont Forum partners in 2015. And then the group that I work for, so I work for the e-infrastructure and data management group. So the Belmont Forum itself is concerned with global change research, But as a subset of that, it was recognised that things like data-intensive research, so things like climate modelling, requires massive data storage, massive data processing, and quite sophisticated data analytics as well. That those particular parts of research needed special attention. So the e-infrastructure and data management group was set up to address that. So that basically means computing and how you handle your data during and at the end of a project. So as it says there, more coordinated approach to the planning, implementation and management of data, the analytics and e-infrastructures. So that again, by coordinating between different countries, we can have a greater chance that there'll be a common agreement as to how these things are handled. And the role of Future Earth. So the Future Earth attends our oversight committee. So that happens every 6 months. And there's a Future Earth representative who comes along to that to have their input. So Future Earth, as was on the slide, consists of 50,000 researchers, which is just phenomenal. So Belmont Forum funds around about 500 researchers. So whilst we have lots of organisations, our actual reach directly is probably smaller than Future Earth with its 50,000. So at the moment as well, so I'll come on to what I do, but so I'm the capacity building person for the Belmont Forum. And at the moment we're exploring incorporating data management into transdisciplinary training. So whether from the outset of projects, when you talk about how you engage with different parties, whether we can include data as an item in that as well. So it's not just about outputs of a project, but actual data as an output from a project, and whether you can make that available to people, and how you're going to make that available, and how you're going to make that available for 10 years' time. And then we exchange information. So Future Earth informs, because Future Earth scientists face the same kind of challenge as the Belmont Forum researchers, then we exchange information on needs. And I'll just tell you a little bit about some of the current work of the group that I'm in. So one thing we do is talk to other people. So we have a coordination office. The coordination office is led by NSF of the US, supported by JST of Japan and most of Taiwan, and consists of 4 people. And the role is to reach out to other organisations. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here today, is to raise the awareness of the Belmont Forum within other groups that we associate with. So the GEO, Group on Earth Observations, we talk to regularly, ICSU, and their subgroups of WDS, which is the World Data Centres, so how you look after data in data repositories, and CODATA, which is how you handle scientific data. Also, Research Data Alliance, which is a great group that we have a lot in common with. So that's a bit like Future Earth, a bit of a bottom-up kind of organisation who have interest groups and working groups. And there are people from Belmont Forum who sit on various parts of those groups and interact with those groups. In fact, so I'm attending a summer school later this year, which is run by a CODATA and RDA jointly run summer school for low and middle income countries to teach research data science over 2 weeks to people, and I'm going to go and go along and help with that. Association of Commonwealth Universities, the UN Statistics Division. The UN's very conscious about data exchange. Again, it's this thing, there are data standards, it's whether or not they're adhered to, and is there a mechanism by which funders can encourage people to stick to data standards, and people like the OECD. So data planning, so this is something that's happening at the moment. So now there will be a data management set of conditions in every Belmont Forum funding call. So it'll just encourage the researchers who are putting in the applications to think about how is that data going to be managed, if it's of long-term value, whatever, again, you've got to decide what's of long-term value. All these questions, these are big questions to ask, especially at the outset of a project. So what data needs to be managed long-term? What happens after the project ends? Where are you going to put it? Is there a data repository you're going to put it in? Does that need to be costed in? So costs of data management, especially if you've got large amounts of data, or other types of samples. So, I mean, I come from a world which is mostly sort of modelling, but other people who have physical samples, where are they going to be stored? How are people going to be able to access them afterwards? And one of the other actions at the moment are other aspects of data, which data security, which is important for data repositories. If you're storing things like climate data, making sure that there's security on that, and how you look after that data while you're producing it as a researcher is also important. And data policy, and also publishers. So publishers obviously have a role to play, again, either because they're interested in making data open, or simply because, like the Belmont Forum, they have influence as well on researchers. And then there's me. So I deal with capacity building. So I am the Human Dimensions Champion for the Belmont Forum. So I've been carrying out a skills gap analysis. So I've been surveying researchers who work in data-intensive type pursuits, things like ecology, people who use Earth observation data, in various forms. And these were the kind of things they came up with as their challenges. So one is finding data. You know, you're a researcher doing this thing. How do I know that there's a data set, you know, that would be just what I needed? I don't need to go and reproduce the data set. I don't need to go and take more samples. I don't need to go and run another model. I could just go and take that data from somewhere else. But finding data is a massive problem. Or an unknown problem. You just don't know what's out there. You don't know what you don't know. And something else that came up generally, which is an interesting one because it was looking at a community within itself, reluctance to share data and models. So obviously on some levels it's understandable that you want to be first with your research, so there's maybe some embargo period before you want to release data, or obviously ethical considerations, privacy considerations. So there are genuine reasons why you might not want to share data, but just that general feeling that sharing data wasn't as easy as it should be. And then quite fundamental things, if you are somebody who's dealing with large amounts of data, that you have the tools to do that. So if you are looking at something that has 6 million entry points, that you're not trying to do that in Excel, that you're using something, and it is one of the things that people do, because you start off with a little bit and then you don't move away from from the thing that feels secure, that there might need to be a bigger step. And then lots on standards. And the thing, it came up in the keynote speeches as well, but common vocabularies. So what I call something, is that the same as what you call something? And I think that's a really important thing to come out to get through. So I'm in the middle of writing up a curricula, so that'll be topics that the Belmont Forum can target for training, and that will be things like metadata standards, sharing, but taking those to audiences who are not already converted to that, and we've got to think about how that's going to go. And then that'll be taken as recommendations to the Belmont Forum for funding. And then finally, so a summary. So the Belmont Forum, if you want to find out about future calls, then you can go to the Belmont Forum website. They all appear on there. As I said, it's a group of national funding agencies and councils who fund global change research. And in the last year, so in 2016, the Belmont Forum partners also added the Sustainable Development Goals to that. So it's not just global change research, it's also moving to that feeling of sustainability as a bigger issue. And I'll just point out again, so every proposal will include a range of scientists and stakeholders and collaboration from at least 3 countries. And so it's quite a high hurdle, but that's deliberate because it's trying to show the benefit of greater global collaboration. And then the group I work for, so the e-infrastructure and data management group, so the kind of computing and data end of things, we have links with Future Earth. We do lots on data planning and get those into Belmont Forum calls, and I deal with capacity building. And then my favourite thing, this is an article I saw in The Economist a month or so ago, that data is a resource, and it's so part of sustainable production and consumption is to consider data as part of that. Thank you. Done.
Great.
Thank you.